Coming up next on Let's Refresh with Apostle Stephen A. Davis.
You got to ask yourself, what's feeding that thing? Something has to feed that thing. Nothing can stay strong unless you feed that thing. If you want to get rid of something in your life, stop feeding that thing. Whatever you're feeding, that thing, that if you feed it with negative thinking, if you feed it with people around you that shouldn't be around you, if you feed it, you're always feeding it, and you want to be up and you want to not be depressed, but you're feeding that thing. And if you keep feeding it, it's going to keep you down. It's going to keep you in that shape. So we have to find out what's feeding Jericho. So I'm going to give you my first point. The commander of the Lord's army was ready to wage war against the ungodly nation. When I say ungodly, I'm talking about a belief. I'm talking about a spirit ruling over that nation. You say they're bad. They're not bad. They're just hostages of what is really bad. Let me help you real quick, because you're calling them by the influence that's over that city or over that region. When you don't know, as the real church, you're their liberation. If you were really touching the principalities and powers, they would go free. Most of the people who are part of Refresh were not swap church folks. Many of them came to this house, don't know much about church at all. You notice that when we start praising, many of them don't dance. They just start hopping. They do the best they know. Many of them didn't come from a trained leadership in the church. Because when you really break heaven open, you don't get somebody else's church leaders. When you really break heaven open, you start getting Ray and Johnny and Cliff, all your cousins and nephews and nieces. You start growing, you start pulling those type of people in, because when you break through, you get the lost, you don't get the found. So he's ready. He's got his sword drawn. He's ready to wage war against the thing that's had everybody locked up. I kind of wonder why church people want to free the free. No disrespect, if you're really solid and you're a really solid believer, I don't know why they invited you here. Because you're not bound. You're the sweetest person that anybody could ever meet. I want those radical folks, those raggedy folks, those I just got high, still smell like weed. I got a fifth in my car. Joshua recognizes the commander of the Lord's army and his posture. He recognizes it. This is what I like about him, because most people don't watch posture. You can tell his maturity because he watches the posture. See, most people, they say, you're upset. My posture doesn't say I'm upset. Sasha watches my posture. You want to know when I'm upset? You ask Sasha, because she knows the posture of an upset daddy. So he's wise enough that he knows the posture of the commander of the army of the Lord. He's got his sword drawn. It wasn't normal for the sword to be drawn unless you're ready to go into battle against something. Some things God is fed up with, but you're not fed up with it. You think God's okay with all these young people dying? You think God's okay with that? God's not okay with that. You think God's okay with these young girls being turned out? And God's not okay with that. So God is ready, and he has his sword drawn because he wants to make sure he liberates them before your child becomes them. I know you think you're doing good parenting, but you take them to school. You drop them off at the school. You let them ride the bus to school. Who do you think that they're interacting with when you're not there? I know you think you're a good teacher, and I know they say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, at home. So his sword drawn, it's a posture saying, hey, Jericho, your time is up. He said, the spirit that operates over Jericho, your time is up. The thing that's been keeping Jericho shut up, the time has come to a close. Are you sensitive enough, or do you want a title so bad you don't know when God is saying somebody's time is up or something time is up? I believe much of what we're dealing with in this city, I believe the Lord has his sword drawn, and he said the time is up. The theft, the time is up. The premature death, time is up. Gun violence, time is up. He's saying time is up to a whole lot of stuff, but we too busy trying to get a title that we don't realize his posture is to say that the time is up. We're tired of all these mothers bearing these sons. The time is up. All these other siblings having to deal with grief the way they're dealing with grief because somebody doesn't realize the time is up. Whenever the Lord draws his sword, is a sign that the time is up. And Joshua understood that the Lord's sword was drawn, so the time was up. I don't know whose side you're on, but I know somebody's time is up. It was all in his posture. This victorious warfare would release the people from the influence of their region. Listen to this. To serve the living God. Let me tell you why people don't serve God. Because the region is bound. Every region has a certain way of thinking. I travel to different places, and every place I go to, I notice that the people think differently. How do you know they think differently? Because they act differently. Wherever people act differently, it's because they're thinking differently. People function based on the way they think. People who don't steal, it's because they don't think about stealing. People who don't lie, it's because they don't think about lying. But it's hard to get a person to not lie when all they think about is lying. People respond from the overflow of their emotions and what they're going through and what they're experiencing. You say, well, they're not angry. Well, they just kicked down the door and cussed somebody out. So that tells me that they're angry. Something's going on inside of their heads. And when there are multiple people operating like that, there's something ruling over that particular region that nobody is addressing. You just said, there's a bad boy. They need to go to jail. How many are you going to incarcerate that you could have got delivered if you would have attacked the right thing? I remember years ago, back in my earlier days, and I wasn't even 30 years old, and I partnered with a friend, and we went to Draper Prison, and I was so surprised when I went into Draper Prison. We went through the doors, and they let us in. I said, man, it's not that bad. Then they shut the door, and I said, this is bad. Then we went through another door, and they shut that door. I was like, this is really bad. Then we went through a third door, and they shut that door. And then I looked around on both sides, all the way down the hallway. I said, this is where all of our African American people are. I'd never seen that number of African American people behind bars. I was shocked. I was shocked. And that told me there is something happening that we got to come up with a solution for. And so I was a manager at a company, and there was this guy that was working under me because I ran into this guy that was extremely talented. He was extremely talented. Boy could sing. He could sing. He could play the organ, but he was playing in prison. So I was talking to a guy that was under me, and we were talking about, I was telling him where I went. He said, yeah, that's where my brother is. I said, that's where your brother is? He said, yeah, my brother was about to sign a contract for singing, a record deal, and he got in some trouble, and he went to jail. And the person he described was the person I saw leading praise and worship. And I said to him, I think that was your brother leading praise and worship from behind bars. Okay. Just telling you, there's some things that are going on. And all those guys that were in there, you want to know why they were in there? Because they thought a certain way. The way they thought would not allow them to remain free. You change the way they think, you can free the person. You can't change their thinking until you address what they don't have the will to overcome. And let me help some of you men who want to, these guys are sitting on the platform. Let me tell you the best place to go. Get you some license and go to the prison. See if you built for real ministry. No disrespect. See if you built for real ministry. Because that's where people like us need you. All right. So this victorious warfare will release the people from the influence of their region. What was their region? Jericho. The Bible says Jericho was straightly shut up. None went out, none went in. Nothing changed. A good child started out. As a good child grew, the good child went down the same path of the other person. Why? Because that was part of how the region operated. There were not many options. Every now and then, somebody got a good coach that directed them. But 1 out of 100, those are not good odds. So these people could live free if the influence of the region was broken off of them. Now I want to go deeper because I want to prove my point. Many of you are not real spiritual. The ones who are spiritual or emotionally damaged because they're overboard. How can you be that spiritual and not know who I am? I'm just clear. If you don't know who I am or you that spiritual, you need to shut that stuff down because God should have told you who I am and what I mean by what I say. Now, let's move in this. There was a force outside of Jericho, which meant there had to be some force equal in authority and rank inside. Because you never send a weaker or a stronger. God is a good steward. God is not going to take the commander of the army of the Lord and put him up against a man. He will put him up against an unseen force that has full control. For those of you who only believe what you can see, what you don't see is what's getting the advantage of you. So let's talk just a little bit more, and I'm going to talk to you about the strong man. This particular commander of the army of the Lord, he was considered a strong man. But then there's also a strong man. Read your Bible. There's a strong man over Jericho. Listen to this. The strong man, as commander of the Lord's army, had to open up what the strong man over Jericho had shut up. You have to have equal or somewhat equal in rank to address what's equal in rank. You can't just take anybody. We want just anybody to pray. We want just anybody to speak. Some people can say more than I say, but can't get the results I get. It's a difference in the rank. It's all a difference in the rank. So listen to this. Matthew 12, verse 29 and verse 30. To prove it to you, Jesus is saying this. I need you to walk with me. Because some of y'all, something going to break over your life. It's 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 going to break over your life. So Matthew 12, verse 29 and 30, it reads this way. How can one enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first bind the strong man, and then he will plunder his house? He who is not with me is against me. See, Joshua's got to find out, Lord, I know who you are. You're on my side, you're on my adversary's side. Whose side are you on? Let's read on. And he who does not gather with me scatters abroad. So in this portion of scripture, Jesus is saying to them and explaining to them, in order for you to go in and you plunder the goods, the family, what do we do when David had come back from back to Ziklag? They had burned his houses and took all of his stuff. You know, some of you said, well, the devil didn't take my children. Something's got your children. You know, if they not worshiping God, something got your children. They didn't. No, something's got your children. Something's got your grandchildren. But the only way you can get them back is that you break the back of the force that drove them out. You're constantly complaining about them instead of asking God, what is this thing that has gained influence over my child, my DNA? I always encourage people, when you got children, don't fight and quarrel against one another. You open up a door. The devil may not come after you, but he'll go after your children. Because, listen, in order to get and spoil and plunder the house, he has to divide myself and Lady Davis. Now we've been closing doors. Why? Because we opened a door, and that's why you got to get your little old self together, because you may live upright and be disciplined, but your sons and your daughters are going to make you look like a fool in the streets. Okay. All right. Okay. So unless you bind the strong man. Now, how do we bind that strong man? He's saying to Joshua, if you think about it, Joshua, you can't go in and you can't get victory over Jericho until we bind the spirit that operates over Jericho. What's influencing Jericho? What flees Jericho? Anytime something negative exists, you got to ask yourself, what's feeding that thing? Something has to feed that thing. Nothing can stay strong unless you feed that thing. If you want to get rid of something in your life, stop feeding that thing. Whatever you're feeding, that thing, that if you feed it with negative thinking, if you feed it with people around you that shouldn't be around you, if you feed it, you're always feeding it, and you want to be up and you want to not be depressed, but you're feeding that thing. And if you keep feeding it, it's going to keep you down. It's going to keep you in that shape. So we have to find out what's feeding Jericho. What is feeding Jericho? What type of information is going into Jericho that these people are shut up? Because if you can cut it off, I'm going to be cutting off a whole lot of stuff at this beginning of this 2024. Messing with my staff, messing with my leaders, messing with my atmosphere, messing with my church. I'm going to cut it off. If they can't stop feeding it, I'm going to cut them off. We ain't letting nothing live that keeps feeding the negativity and the plan of Satan and messing up the atmosphere when God's ready to come down and sit down in your life and do signs, wonders, and miracles. We're going to cut it off. Somebody say, cut it off. So this strong man that we can't identify yet, but we know the strong man that God has sent. Somebody needs to understand you are not alone. If it's God's time, you are not alone. You can look up here. I don't have to have these three men up here. I am not alone. The reason I'm bold, I am not alone. The reason you're scared, because you don't know that the Lord is with you. I have never been alone. I never will be alone. So the commander of the Lord's army is standing there. Joshua recognizes him. I got to figure out, did you come to stop me from invading them? Or did you come to take them out so we can invade them? What did you come? Did you come for the city to consume us? Or did you come for us to influence the city? You got to ask yourself those type of questions. Because if you don't ask yourself those type of questions, you won't know why you exist. Well, I believe refresh exists not to be consumed and subdued by the things of the city, but to influence the city. Stay with me. So now that we know one of the strong men, which is a good one, the one sent from God, we got to figure out who the other one is. Now let me verify my case for those of you who don't know your Bible very well, but I can teach you if you just listen. Notice that Joshua and his people plundered Jericho because he, Joshua, humbled himself. You can never plunder an adversary with pride and arrogancy. You got to humble yourself. You got to put down all that stuff you depend on and that you believe in and say, here I am, Lord. Send me, I'll go. So Joshua and the people plundered Jericho because he humbled himself and followed the instructions that were given to him. The instructions, you go march around that wall. Don't you say anything till you go the seventh time. That's why it's so important to teach yourself and the people around you. Be quiet until it's time to speak. Some people are very mouthy, but being mouthy shows your ignorance. Because you should never be forward in your speech when you don't have proper information concerning your surroundings. You should sit and learn the language, or you will prove that you're not bilingual when you open up your mouth. So he humbles himself. He follows the instructions because he understands he's facing something. You're facing something, people. What you're facing is much higher than what you think it is. The sickness that you're dealing with is something much higher than what you think you're dealing with, because if you see that many patterns of it and it starts to find the similarities, it's a similar enemy. Colossians 2 verse 15. Colossians 2 and verse 15. I ask myself, why does this type of devil keep coming? Why does this type of devil want to stop me? Why does this type of devil want to try to demoralize my integrity? Why does this type of devil keep coming to try to use people that I trusted but didn't trust me? The problem is not that I didn't trust them. The problem is they didn't trust me. So in Colossians 2 verse 15 out of the New Living Translation, in this way, he, talking about Jesus, disarmed the spiritual rulers and authority. He shamed them publicly by his victory over them on the cross. Listen. Many of you, the devil wants to shame you publicly because you're supposed to shame him publicly. These are forces and rulership over regions. Get it now. They'll let you be the mayor. They'll let you be the sheriff. But why do they still sit in these seats and have meetings and guide everything that's going on? They'll let you be the supervisor. They'll let you be the foreman. But why don't you call me to that executive table? Let me back up off of that. There's this force, and you calling it white, and you calling it black, and you calling it yellow, and you calling it red. There is this force, this rulership of authority that hovers over regions to dictate what happens in those regions. If you ever start coming out of the mindset of the region, not only will you feel the negativity, that spirit will hire people just like you to attack you, because that is the spirit of the region. And you want to know why you go through battles? It's because you allows your mind to get above what's normal for the region. And when your mind gets above what's normal for the region, there's a signal sent to those who are in the region. they ain't nothing, who they think they are, why they think they can talk like that, why they think they can go there, and that won't come, but it has enough influence among you that an attack will, or an assault against your life will cause you to feel like you can't go on. I never get upset and bitter with people. The Bible says an idle mind is a devil works. No, that's what people came up with. It don't read that way. But it's so true. When people don't have enough to think about, they think about taking you out. So Jesus disarmed it. The growth of this church has been the result of disarming principalities and powers. We disarmed. We were intentional. I knew what to address. I can read anything. I can discern anything. They can say, well, I think he's missing. No, I think you're missing it. I think you're in denial because I hit it on the spot. I know exactly what it is because this is what I do. Because I'm not going to waste my life battling something that's not an enemy.
Salmon begot Boaz by Rahab.
Wait. Whoa. Now, we've been preaching Ruth and Boaz for a while. So you say a hoe was Boaz's mama?
Yes.
Girl, you a wild woman. You right where you need to be. Wait a minute. Read that again.
Salmon begat Boaz by Rahab.
Simon, who was a man of God. Go ahead.
Salmon begat Boaz by Rahab.
Okay. Go ahead.
Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. Obed begat Jesse. And Jesse begat David the king.
Oh, y'all ain't been to church. Y'all ain't been to church. Y'all need to go back from scratch. All that craziness y'all been learning in church, you ought to be in here every time you can so we can teach you what to expect about yourself. Because some of y'all have counted yourself out thinking that God can't take a mess and turn it into a miracle. On the count of 3, something gonna break over Birmingham. You want to know why? Because God can take a mess and make a miracle out of it. 1, 2, 3.
Want to find out more about Apostle Stephen A. Davis? Well, log on because StephenADavis.org is now live. That's right, log on to StephenADavis.org now and you can find out all about him, watch live broadcasts, and get all the information you need at StephenADavis.org. Available on all platforms. Log on today. Refresh Family Church. As we worship together, remember our 5 goals: serving the needs of families, reaching the lost, equipping the saints, reaching the nations, and transferring to generations. At Refresh Family Church, we're more than just a church. We're a nation. To find out more, log on to StephenADavis.org. We'll see you next time.